I stared at the ATM screen in disbelief, my fingers trembling as I punched in my PIN again. Insufficient funds. The words glared back at me, cold and unforgiving. That was impossible. Just yesterday, my account had contained $247,000, the entire inheritance from my sister Margot, plus my life savings. I tried once more, hoping it was just a system error. Insufficient funds. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My heart pounded as I fumbled for my phone, dialing the bank's customer service. The representative's voice was professionally sympathetic as she confirmed what I already feared. Mrs. Mitchell, it appears a wire transfer was processed yesterday afternoon. The full balance was transferred to an account under the name of Michael Mitchell. My son. My own son had emptied my bank account without my knowledge. Was this transfer authorized by you, Mrs. Mitchell? The representative asked. I couldn't even speak. The sidewalk seemed to tilt beneath my feet as pedestrians streamed past me, oblivious to the fact that my world was crumbling. My name is Eleanor Mitchell, Ellie to everyone who knows me. For 35 years, I taught 4th grade at Lakeside Grove Elementary, helping shape young minds while raising 2 children of my own. Teaching wasn't just my career, it was my calling. Even on the hardest days when my patience wore thin, I never once regretted my choice. My husband Richard and I bought our modest 3-bedroom house on Maple Street when Michael was just a baby. We stretched every penny to afford it, but Richard insisted we needed a yard where our children could play. He was always thinking ahead, planning for our future. When Jennifer came along 3 years later, our little home felt complete. Richard worked as an engineer at the manufacturing plant across town, putting in long hours so I could work shorter days and be home when the kids got back from school. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we managed. We had each other, and that was enough. Then Richard got sick, pancreatic cancer. It moved quickly, giving us barely 8 months from diagnosis to the end. Michael had just finished college, and Jennifer was in her sophomore year. I was 52. Promise me you'll take care of yourself, Ellie, Richard whispered to me during his final week. Don't just live for the kids. Find something that's yours. I nodded, clutching his hand as if I could anchor him to this world through sheer force of will. But promises are easier made than kept. After Richard died, I threw myself into being both mother and father to our children. Jennifer was struggling in school, overwhelmed by grief, while Michael needed help navigating his first job and adult responsibilities. I postponed grief to focus on them. There would be time for me later, I thought. The years passed in a blur of parent-teacher conferences, career advice sessions, and emotional support. Michael met Kathy during his 2nd year at the investment firm. She was ambitious and polished, working in real estate with an eye on luxury properties. Jennifer eventually found her footing, graduated, and landed a job in marketing that led her to meet Diego, who later became her husband. I continued teaching, finding solace in my classroom where everything made sense. Children needed guidance, knowledge, and occasional discipline, all things I knew how to provide. At home, in the empty hours, I sometimes pulled out my watercolors, dabbing hesitant brushes on paper before putting them away again. Painting had been my passion before life got in the way, before I became Mrs. Mitchell, Richard's wife and Michael and Jennifer's mother. Mom, you should sell this house, Michael suggested during one of his visits, about 5 years after Richard passed. It's too big for just you, and the maintenance is only going to become more difficult as you get older. This is our family. Home, I replied, gesturing to the walls covered with framed school photos and family vacation memories. Your father and I built a life here. Michael exchanged a look with Kathy that I pretended not to notice. Dad would understand. He'd want, "What's practical for you?" Perhaps he was right. but I couldn't bear to leave. In this house, I could still feel echoes of Richard, in the creaking step he'd always promised to fix, in the slightly uneven bookshelf he'd built in the living room, in the garden he'd cultivated every spring. When I finally retired at 65, after 3 decades of shaping young minds, my classroom thrown a celebration that left me in tears. My colleagues presented me with a beautiful wooden box filled with premium watercolor supplies. "We know you used to paint," said Diane, my closest friend at school. "Now you'll have time for yourself again." The box sat unopened on my desk for months. Somehow, I couldn't quite remember how to do things just for myself. Then came the call about Margot. My sister had always been the adventurous one, choosing travel and career over marriage and children. We'd drifted apart after Richard died, my life revolving around my grief and children, hers taking her to archaeological digs across the globe. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Mitchell," the lawyer said over the phone. "Your sister passed away last week in Peru, a hiking accident." I sat in stunned silence. Margot and I had spoken only twice in the past year, brief calls on birthdays and Christmas. I'd been meaning to visit her, someday, when things settled down. "There's something else," the lawyer continued, his tone softening. "Your sister named you as her sole beneficiary. The inheritance is substantial, approximately $200,000, plus some personal effects that are being shipped to you." The money arrived 3 weeks later, deposited directly into my checking account. I stared at the balance, $247,392.14, a number so large it almost seemed fictional. Margot had always been smart with investments, but I'd had no idea she'd accumulated so much. That same afternoon, a large wooden trunk arrived, containing travel journals, artifacts collected from around the world, and dozens of photographs of Margot in exotic locations. At the bottom of the trunk, I found an envelope with my name written in my sister's familiar scrawl. Inside was a short letter. "Ellie, if you're reading this, I've gone on my final adventure. Don't waste time on grief. We both know I lived exactly as I wanted. The money is yours, no strings attached. Do what you never let yourself do. It's not too late. Remember when we were girls and painted together by the lake? You were always better than me, though you never believed it. I've enclosed something that might help you remember. It's your turn to live, little sister. Love always. Margot." Beneath the letter was a small watercolor, a landscape I'd painted when I was 16. Margot had kept it all these years. I called Michael that evening, emotion making my voice waver as I told him about Margot and the unexpected inheritance. 200,000? He repeated, his tone shifting in a way I couldn't quite identify. "Plus your savings? Mom, that's a lot of money for someone your age to manage." Something in his words stung, but I brushed it aside. "I'm perfectly capable of managing my own money, Michael. I've been handling the household finances since your father died." Of course, he backpedaled. "I just meant, well, with interest rates and investment options, you could really make this work for you. Why don't I come over tomorrow? I can bring some information, help you make a plan." I agreed, touched by his concern. That night, I took out the watercolor supplies my colleagues had given me and, for the first time in decades, lost myself in swirls of color and light. Michael arrived the next day with Kathy and a portfolio filled with glossy brochures. They sat across from me at the kitchen table where I'd once helped them with homework, their expressions serious. "Mom, we've been talking," Michael began, sharing another of those looks with Kathy. "This inheritance is a blessing, but it could also make you a target." "A target?" I echoed, confused. Kathy leaned forward, her manicured hand covering mine. "Elder fraud is a serious problem, Ellie. Scammers specifically look for recent widows and retirees who come into money." "I'm hardly senile," I said, trying to keep the edge from my voice. "And I've been a widow for 13 years. "It's not about being senile," Michael said. These scammers are sophisticated. They build trust over time, and with you living alone. I sipped my tea, letting their words wash over me as they outlined scenarios ranging from plausible to absurd. Romance scams, investment fraud, fake charities. According to them, the world was filled with predators just waiting to separate me from my sister's money. What we think makes the most sense, Michael finally concluded, is to move the money somewhere more secure. I've set up an investment account that both of us can monitor. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I'll handle the day-to-day management, make sure it's growing properly, but you'll have full visibility. And access? I asked. Michael hesitated just long enough for me to notice. Of course, it's your money, but the account will have some protections in place. Waiting periods for large withdrawals, dual authorization requirements, standard security features. Something felt off, but I told myself I was being paranoid. This was Michael, my son, who'd held my hand at Richard's funeral, who called every Sunday without fail, who'd helped me navigate technology and home repairs and all the things Richard used to handle. Let me think about it, I said finally. Kathy's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. The thing is, Ellie, these opportunities have time limitations. The account Michael has arranged offers a special rate, but only if we complete the transfer this week. I looked at my son, searching his face for the little boy who'd once brought me dandelions and told me I was the best mom in the universe. Just trust me, Mom, he said. I'm only trying to protect you. So I signed the papers he placed before me, barely skimming the details. After all, this was my son. If I couldn't trust him, who could I trust? The next 2 weeks passed in a pleasant buzz of activity. Jennifer and her family came to visit for the weekend, something that had become increasingly rare as her children's schedules filled with activities and her career demands intensified. It's so good to see you, Mom, she said, hugging me tightly. Michael told us about Aunt Margot's inheritance. That's wonderful news. I noticed she didn't mention being sorry about Margot's death. But then again, my children had never been close with my sister. She'd been the eccentric aunt who sent exotic gifts but rarely attended family gatherings. We should celebrate, Jennifer continued. What are you planning to do with the money? Before I could answer, her husband Diego chimed in. If you're thinking about investments, my buddy works with a great financial advisor. Michael's actually helping me with that, I said, catching the quick glance Jennifer exchanged with Diego. The same kind of look Michael and Kathy often shared when they thought I wasn't paying attention. Jennifer nodded a little too enthusiastically. That's perfect. Michael's so good with money. Remember how he used to count his allowance twice before spending even a penny? Later that evening, as I was preparing dinner, I overheard Jennifer on the phone in the guest room, her voice low but intense. Yes, she mentioned that you're handling it. No, I didn't bring it up directly. Of course I understand the arrangement. We agreed, 50-50 after expenses. I moved away from the door, my chest tight. Surely I had misunderstood. Jennifer couldn't be discussing my money with Michael. There must be some other explanation. During dinner, my grandchildren filled the silence with stories about school and friends, while the adults exchanged meaningful glances I pretended not to see. When they left on Sunday, Jennifer hugged me extra long. We should do this more often, she said. The kids miss their grandma. I'd like that, I replied, meaning it despite the unease that had settled in my stomach. The following Tuesday, I decided to check my bank account, curious about whether Michael had already transferred the money to this special investment account he'd mentioned. That's when I discovered my balance. $372. 19. Everything else, my sister's inheritance and my own modest savings, was gone. I called Michael immediately, my hands shaking. Mom? Is everything okay? His voice sounded concerned, normal. The money, I managed to say. It's gone. All of it. There was a pause, and then Michael's tone shifted to something gentler, as if he were speaking to a confused child. We discussed this, remember? I moved it to the secure investment account. It's all there, safe and growing. But I didn't authorize such a large transfer. I stopped, trying to remember exactly what I'd signed. Had the paperwork mentioned emptying my personal account entirely? Mom, we went through all of this. You signed the authorization. I have a copy if you need to see it again. Michael sounded patient, but there was an undercurrent of something else. Annoyance? Are you feeling all right? You seem confused. I'm not confused, I said, more sharply than I intended. I just didn't realize you'd be taking every penny. It makes the most sense from an investment perspective, Michael explained. Managing a unified portfolio yields better returns. But if you need spending money, just let me know. We can set up a regular transfer into your checking account, maybe $500 a month? That should cover your groceries and utilities, right? $500, as if I were a child receiving an allowance from my own money. I'd like access to the investment account, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. You said I'd have visibility. Absolutely, Michael replied smoothly. I'll send you the login information. But remember, there are those security features we discussed. Any withdrawals over $1,000 require dual authorization and a waiting period. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the faded placemats Richard and I had bought during our 25th anniversary trip to Maine. Had I really agreed to this arrangement? Had I been so eager to please my son, so grateful for his attention that I'd handed over everything? The login information arrived by email an hour later. The investment account interface was complex, filled with charts and terminology I didn't understand. But the balance was there, $247,000. At least the money existed. I tried to initiate a withdrawal of $5,000, enough to give me breathing room. While I sorted everything out, the system immediately flagged it for secondary authorization and showed it as pending approval from account manager. I called Michael again. I'm trying to withdraw some of my money, I said, no longer bothering to hide my frustration. Mom, we just discussed this, he said, his patience clearly thinning. If you need money for something specific, tell me what it's for, and I'll make sure you get it. It's my money, Michael. I don't need to explain why I want it. There was silence on the other end, then a deep sigh. Mom, I'm worried about you. First you forget our discussions about the account. Now you're trying to make large withdrawals without any clear purpose. Maybe we should talk to Dr. Stevens. These memory issues. There is nothing wrong with my memory, I interrupted, anger finally breaking through. I want access to my money. Now. Let's discuss this when you've calmed down, Michael said, his tone maddeningly reasonable. I have meetings all afternoon, but I'll call you tomorrow. Try to get some rest, okay? The line went dead. I stared at the phone in disbelief. What had just happened? How had I lost control of my own finances so completely? And worse, was my son actually suggesting I was becoming mentally incompetent because I wanted access to my own money? I looked around. My kitchen, at the home I'd maintained for decades, and suddenly felt like a stranger in it. This house that had been my sanctuary now felt like a cage. Without direct access to my funds, I was essentially living on an allowance from my own son. That evening, Jennifer called. Her tone was light, casual, but I could hear the underlying tension. Michael mentioned you were upset about the account, she said. He's worried about you. Did he mention that he took all my money without proper authorization? I asked. Jennifer's sigh mirrored her brother's from earlier. Mom, we're only trying to protect you. You don't understand how many scams target seniors these days. Remember Mrs. Patterson from your church? Didn't she lose her house to that contractor scam? Mrs. Patterson had been 87 and suffering from early dementia. The comparison stung more than Jennifer could possibly know. I'm not Mrs. Patterson, I said quietly, and I'm not a child. No one's saying you are, Jennifer replied, her voice taking on that same patient tone Michael had used. But managing this kind of money requires expertise. Michael does this for a living. Just trust us, okay? Trust. There was that word again. Trust us, even as they took control of my life without my full consent. After hanging up, I pulled out the wooden art box and began to paint, my brushstrokes aggressive and dark. The image that emerged wasn't one of my usual serene landscapes. It was a cage with an open door, a bird hesitating on the threshold. I went to bed that night with a plan forming. The next morning, I would go to the bank in person. Surely they would help me understand what had happened and how to regain control of my finances. I was a competent adult with all my faculties intact. This situation could be fixed. But as I drifted off to sleep, Richard's last words echoed in my mind. Find something that's yours. Sign. I had failed him by pouring everything into our children, neglecting my own needs and desires. Now, those same children were treating me like I was incapable of managing my own life. Something had to change. I just didn't realize how drastically my life was about to transform. I arrived at First National Bank of Lakeside Grove at 9:05 a.m., dressed in my most professional outfit, a navy blue suit I'd worn to parent-teacher conferences and school board meetings. The young woman behind the desk, whose name tag identified her as Brianna, greeted me with a customer service smile that dimmed slightly when I explained my situation. "Let me see what information I can find for you, Mrs. Mitchell," she said, typing rapidly on her keyboard. Her expression grew increasingly uncomfortable. "I'm going to need to bring my manager over for this conversation." The manager, a middle-aged man named Mr. Collins, invited me into his office. Behind closed doors, his professional demeanor gave way to genuine concern. "Mrs. Mitchell, the transfer documentation appears to be in order," he began, spreading several papers on the desk between us. "Your signature authorizes the complete transfer of funds to this investment account." I leaned forward to examine the documents. The signature did look like mine, though something about it felt off, perhaps executed in a moment of distraction or trust. "Can you tell me more about this investment account?" I asked. "Is it a standard type of arrangement?" Mr. Collins hesitated. "It's what we call a managed trust account. Typically, these are used for beneficiaries who require oversight." "Oversight," I repeated, the word bitter in my mouth. "Like children, or people with diminished capacity." He didn't deny it. "The account requires dual authorization for withdrawals over a certain amount. In this case, your son has primary authorization rights." "Can this be undone?" I asked. "It's my money." Mr. Collins looked genuinely apologetic. "Not without the primary account manager's approval, or—" He trailed off. "Or what?" I pressed. "Or legal intervention. If you believe your funds were transferred without your full understanding or consent, that would be a matter for an attorney." I left the bank with a business card for an elder law attorney and a sick feeling in my stomach. My own children had effectively taken control of my finances under the guise of protection, and now my only recourse was legal action against my own family. As I walked home, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Checking in. Hope you're feeling better. Today, Kathy and I were thinking of stopping by this weekend. Let me know if you need anything from the store." So normal, so considerate, as if he hadn't just hijacked my entire financial life. I didn't respond. Instead, I called the attorney, a woman named Gloria Ramirez, and made an appointment for the following day. Then I went home, pulled out my watercolors, and began to paint with an intensity I hadn't felt in decades. By evening, I had produced 3 paintings, angry, vivid pieces that captured my sense of betrayal. And in the process, I'd made a decision. If my children thought they could control me through money, they were about to discover how wrong they were. Because what Michael and Jennifer didn't understand, what I had almost forgotten myself, was that I had always possessed a fortune they couldn't touch, one that had nothing to do with bank accounts or investments. It was time to reclaim it. Gloria Ramirez's office was located in a converted Victorian house downtown. Its exterior painted a cheerful yellow that belied the serious matters handled inside. I arrived 15 minutes early, clutching a folder containing bank statements, transfer documents, and the brochures Michael had given me. The waiting room was warm and inviting, with comfortable chairs and walls adorned with local artwork. As I leafed through a magazine to distract myself, I couldn't help but notice a watercolor landscape that captured Lakeside Grove's autumn foliage with remarkable skill. "That's one of my favorites," said a voice behind me. I turned to see a woman in her early 60s with silver-streaked black hair and kind eyes behind stylish glasses. "Gloria Ramirez," she said, extending her hand. "You must be Eleanor Mitchell." In her office, Gloria listened intently as I explained my situation, occasionally jotting notes but mostly maintaining eye contact. There was no hint of condescension. In her manner, no suggestion that my age somehow diminished my competence, a refreshing change after my recent interactions with my children. "This is unfortunately common," she said when I finished. "Family financial exploitation happens more than people realize, often with the perpetrators genuinely believing they're acting in the elders' best interests." "I'm not elderly," I said, perhaps too sharply. "I'm 68 and perfectly capable." Gloria smiled. "I'm 64 myself, Mrs. Mitchell. I don't consider either of us elderly, but the law provides certain protections based on age categories, and those can work in our favor here." She carefully examined the documents I'd brought, her expression growing more troubled as she read through the transfer authorization. "This is concerning," she said finally. "The language here is intentionally complex, burying the full transfer. Authorization under jargon most people wouldn't catch. And this clause here, it essentially grants your son power of attorney for financial matters." "I never agreed to that," I said, alarmed. Many people wouldn't realize what they were signing. This document was clearly drafted to obscure its true purpose. Gloria removed her glasses, fixing me with a direct gaze. "Mrs. Mitchell, what do you want to happen here? What outcome are you seeking?" I hadn't fully crystallized my thoughts until that moment, but her question brought clarity. "I want my money back, all of it. I want to make my own decisions. And I want my children to understand that what they did was wrong, not just legally, but morally," Gloria nodded. "We have several options. The most straightforward is to send a demand letter instructing your son to return the funds immediately. If he refuses, we can file for an emergency injunction and then proceed with civil action for financial exploitation." "You mean sue my own children?" I said flatly. "Yes," she acknowledged. "Though sometimes the threat of legal action is enough to resolve these situations. Family members often back down when they realize there could be public and legal consequences. I thought about Michael and Jennifer, about how they'd convinced themselves they were protecting me, about the subtle ways they'd questioned my competence. I thought about Margot's letter. Do what you never let yourself do. It's not too late. Let's start with the demand letter, I decided. But I need to prepare myself for their reaction. They won't take this well. Gloria nodded. That's wise. In these situations, family members often escalate their control efforts when challenged. They may suggest you're being influenced by others, that you're confused, even that you need guardianship protection. Are there any other family members or friends who can support you? Diane Russo, my friend from teaching, I said immediately. And I have a few other colleagues I've stayed close with. Good. Stay connected with them. Document everything, every interaction with your children, any attempts to access your funds. And Mrs. Mitchell, Gloria added, her expression softening. Take care of yourself during this process. Family conflicts are emotionally draining, especially when they involve a sense of betrayal. I left Gloria's office with a plan in motion and a weight lifted from my shoulders. For the first time, since discovering the empty bank account, I felt a sense of agency returning. Gloria would draft the demand letter immediately, giving Michael 5 business days to return all funds to a new account in my name only. Rather than going straight home, I found myself walking toward Riverview Community Center. I'd passed the building countless times but had never gone inside. Always too busy with family obligations or too tired from teaching to explore community activities. The center was bustling with afternoon activity, a senior yoga class ending in one room, an art group gathering in another. I hesitated in the lobby, suddenly feeling out of place. "First time here?" asked a gray-haired man arranging brochures at the welcome desk. His name tag read, Tom. "Is it that obvious?" I asked with a small smile. "Everyone's got a first time," he replied cheerfully. "I'm Tom Winters, volunteer coordinator. Anything in particular you're interested in?" I glanced toward the art room where people were setting up easels. "Actually, I paint. Or I used to." Tom's face brightened. "Perfect timing. The Thursday watercolor group is just getting started. They're always welcoming new members." Before I could make an excuse, Tom was already leading me toward the room. "Everyone, we have a new artist joining us today. This is—" He paused, looking at me expectantly. "Ellie," I said, surprising myself by using my nickname rather than the more formal Eleanor I'd defaulted to in recent years. "Ellie Mitchell." The group welcomed me warmly, clearing a space at a large table. A woman named Sarah, who appeared to be around my age, shared her extra paper when she noticed I hadn't brought supplies. "Don't worry about it," she said when I tried to protest. "First session is always a trial run. If you decide to keep coming, you can bring your own next time." For the next 2 hours, I lost myself in color and form, the familiar motions of brush against paper soothing my frayed nerves. I painted the view of Lakeside Grove I could see from the windows, the gentle curve of the shoreline, autumn trees, reflecting in the water. It wasn't my best work, technical skills rusty from disuse, but it felt authentic in a way I hadn't experienced in years. "That's really good," said Martin, an elderly gentleman whose own painting featured precise architectural details of the town hall. "You've clearly done this before." "A long time ago," I admitted. "Talent doesn't disappear," said Sarah, cleaning her brushes. "It just waits for you to come back to it." As the session ended, Sarah and Martin invited me to join them for coffee at Sunflower Cafe across the street. I hesitated only briefly before accepting. My empty house held little appeal compared to their easy companionship. Over steaming mugs, I learned that Sarah was a retired nurse whose husband had passed away 5 years earlier. Martin had been an accountant and never married, dedicating his retirement to volunteer work and pursuing artistic hobbies he'd neglected during his working years. Both had been coming to the community center for over 2 years. "It saved me after Frank died," Sarah confided. "Having somewhere to go, people who expected me to show up. Some days it was the only reason I got dressed." I nodded, understanding. Completely. My husband Richard has been gone 13 years. Sometimes I still expect to see him when I walk into the kitchen. "Grief changes shape, but it never really leaves," Martin said quietly. "Having a community helps." I surprised myself by sharing pieces of my current situation, not the full legal details, but enough to convey that my children had made financial decisions I was now challenging. "My daughter tried something similar after my husband died," Sarah said, shaking her head. "Suggested I couldn't manage on my own, that I should sell the house and move in with her family." "What did you do?" I asked. Sarah grinned. Signed up for an investment course at the community college and started managing my own portfolio. Now I make better returns than her husband does. We parted with plans to meet again the following Thursday for the next watercolor session. Walking home in the fading afternoon light, I felt a glimmer of something I hadn't experienced in years, the excitement of new beginnings, of possibilities unfolding. The feeling didn't last long. When I turned onto Maple Street, I immediately spotted Michael's sleek black SUV parked in my driveway. He and Kathy were sitting on my front porch, their postures tense. "Mom, where have you been?" Michael demanded, as I approached. "We've been calling for hours. We were about to file a missing person report." I glanced at my phone, which I'd silenced during the art session. 5 missed calls from Michael, 3 from Jennifer. It was barely 5:30 p.m. "I wasn't aware I needed to report my whereabouts," I said evenly, unlocking the front door. "Would you like to come in, or were you just leaving?" Michael's jaw tightened, but Kathy placed a restraining hand on his arm. "We were worried, Ellie," she said in that overly soothing tone I'd come to detest, "when you didn't answer your phone." "I was at an art class at the community center," I explained, hanging my sweater on the coat rack. My phone was silenced. They followed me into the kitchen, exchanging their signature meaningful glances. Michael pulled out his phone, texting rapidly, letting Jennifer know I'd been found, no doubt. "An art class?" Kathy repeated, raising perfectly shaped eyebrows. "That's new." "Actually, it's not," I corrected her. "I painted for years before I had children. I'm returning to an old passion." I filled the kettle, determined to maintain the routine of offering tea despite my simmering anger. As I moved around the kitchen, I noticed Michael's eyes tracking me, assessing. "Mom, we need to talk about yesterday," he finally said. "Your confusion about the account, these sudden new activities. We're concerned." I set the kettle down harder than necessary. "I'm not confused, Michael. I know exactly what happened. You transferred all of my money, including my personal savings, into an account that I can't access without your permission." "For your protection?" he insisted. "No," I said firmly. "Taking all of someone's money without their full understanding isn't protection. It's control." Michael's face flushed. "You signed the agreement. An agreement written specifically to obscure what I was actually authorizing," I countered. "Did you think I wouldn't figure it out? That I'd just accept living on an allowance from my own money?" Kathy intervened, her voice honeyed with false concern. "Ellie, sweetheart, nobody's trying to control you. We're worried because you're acting differently. First, the confusion about the account, now suddenly taking art classes, being unreachable for hours. I'm acting differently because I've decided to live my life for myself," I said. "Something I should have done years ago." Michael pushed back from the table. "Mom, I think we need to schedule an appointment with Dr. Stevens. These moody swings, this paranoia about us, it's not like you." "What's not like me is standing up for myself," I said quietly. "But that's changing." The kettle whistled, a shrill counterpoint to the tension in the room. I turned to shut it off, and when I faced my son again, I saw something I'd never noticed before. The calculating look in his eyes, quickly masked by concern. "Michael, I want my money transferred back to me by Monday. All of it." The mask of concern vanished. "That's not going to happen, Mom. The investments are locked in for at least 30 days. Besides, you're clearly not thinking rationally right now. Then you leave me no choice," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "What does that mean?" Michael demanded. "It means I've consulted an attorney. You'll be receiving a formal demand letter tomorrow." The shock on their faces would have been almost comical under different circumstances. Michael recovered first, his expression hardening. "An attorney? You're threatening legal action against your own son?" His voice rose with each word. After everything I've done for you? Managing your finances, checking on you, making sure you're safe? I never asked you to manage my finances, I pointed out. I asked for advice, not for you to take control. This is ridiculous, Michael spat. No court would side with you. You signed the documents. You agreed to the arrangement. We'll see, I said simply. Kathy stood, gathering her designer handbag. Michael, let's go. Your mother obviously needs some time to think about what she's doing. She turned to me, dropping all pretense of warmth. Ellie, I hope you realize how much you're hurting your son. After everything he's sacrificed for this family. They left without another word, the front door slamming behind them. Minutes later, my phone rang, Jennifer calling, no doubt after receiving Michael's update. I let it go to voicemail. Instead, I went to the spare bedroom where I'd set up my painting supplies. The afternoon's creative energy still hummed within me, demanding expression. I worked until well past midnight, producing a series of images that captured my emotional landscape. Dark woods giving way to clearings of light, paths winding toward uncertain horizons, birds soaring from opened cages. The next morning, Jennifer arrived unannounced, her expression a mixture of worry and indignation. She'd left the children with Diego, a rarity that signaled the seriousness of her mission. Mom, what is going on? She demanded as soon as I opened the door. Michael says you're threatening to sue him? I led her to the kitchen, where half-finished paintings were drying on every available surface. Jennifer stopped short, staring at them. When did you start painting again? She asked, momentarily distracted. Recently, I said, putting on coffee. After discovering your brother had taken all of my money. Jennifer's shoulders tensed. He didn't take it, Mom. He's managing it for you. There's a difference. Is there? When I have to ask permission to access my own funds? When I'm given an allowance like a child? It's for your own protection, I finished. Yes, you both keep saying that. Strange how this protection involves controlling every penny I have. Jennifer sank into a chair, suddenly looking less certain. Mom, you have to understand. When Michael told me about Aunt Margot's inheritance, we were worried. That's a lot of money, and we've both seen how people can take advantage. People like you and your brother? I interrupted. Because from where I'm standing, the only ones who've taken advantage of me are my own children. Her face crumpled. That's not fair. No, it's not fair, I agreed. It's not fair that after raising you both, sacrificing my own dreams and needs for decades, I'm treated like I'm incapable of managing my own affairs. It's not fair that the moment I receive an inheritance, my children orchestrate a plan to control it. It wasn't like that, Jennifer protested weakly. Then tell me what it was like, I challenged. Tell me why you and Michael were discussing splitting my money 50-50 after expenses when you thought I couldn't hear. Jennifer's face went white. You heard that? I heard enough, I said, pouring coffee into mugs with hands that weren't quite steady. Enough to know this wasn't just about protection. Jennifer stared into her coffee, silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. We weren't planning to take your money, Mom. Not really. Michael said the arrangement was temporary, just until we could set up a proper trust. And yes, we discussed that after you were gone, we'd split what remained. After expenses, I repeated. What expenses, Jennifer? She wouldn't meet my eyes. The senior living facility. Michael found one that's really nice, with full care options for when you need them. We thought, with the house sold and the inheritance, there'd be enough to cover it for years. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just about controlling my money, it was about controlling my entire future. A future that involved selling my home and moving me into a facility, all without my input or consent. I see, I said, my voice unnaturally calm. And when were you planning to inform me of these decisions you'd made about my life? Jennifer flinched. It wasn't definite yet. Michael was researching options. We were going to talk to you once everything was arranged, present it as a gift. A gift, I echoed. Moving me out of my home and into a facility, taking my money to pay for it, and splitting whatever's left. How generous of you. Mom, please. We only want what's best for you, Jennifer said, reaching for my hand. I withdrew it. No, you want what's convenient for you. What's best for me would be respecting my autonomy and my choices. But you're all alone in this big house, Jennifer persisted. What if something happens? What if you fall or get sick? None of us would know until it was too late. I'm not alone, I said. I have friends. I'm building a community. And there are plenty of ways to address safety concerns without taking away my independence. Jennifer's expression hardened slightly. Is that what your new lawyer friend told you? Michael says you've been manipulated. I laughed, a short, harsh sound. Of course he does. It's easier to believe I'm being manipulated than to accept that I can think for myself. We talked in circles for another hour, Jennifer cycling through concern, defensiveness, guilt, and back to concern. By the time she left, we'd reached an uneasy impasse. She promised to talk to Michael about returning some of my money immediately, while I agreed to consider options for the future that addressed their concerns about my safety. I didn't believe her, and I suspect she knew it. The trust between us had been fractured, perhaps irreparably. After Jennifer left, I called Gloria to update her on the conversations with my children. She was unsurprised by their reactions. The demand letter went out by courier this morning, she assured me. Michael should receive it today. Be prepared for escalation, anger, attempts to isolate you, possibly even threats about your mental competence. They've already started questioning my state of mind, I told her, suggesting I need medical evaluation because I'm standing up for myself. Document everything, Gloria reminded me, and stay connected to your support network. Isolation is their most powerful tool. That afternoon, I returned to the community center, drawn by a flyer I'd noticed for a financial literacy workshop. The session was led by a retired bank manager who covered basics of investing, fraud protection, and estate planning. I took detailed notes, asking questions that earned approving nods from the instructor. You've got a good head for this, he commented after class. Ever considered taking a more active role in managing your investments? I smiled ruefully. I'm working on reclaiming that role as we speak. Tom Winters, the volunteer coordinator. I'd met the previous day, caught up with me as I was leaving. Ellie, I was hoping I'd see you. How did you enjoy the watercolor group? It was wonderful, I said sincerely. I'm planning to come back next week. Actually, I wanted to ask you something, Tom said, falling into step beside me. I noticed your work yesterday. You have real talent. We're putting together an art show for local seniors next month. Would you consider submitting something? I hesitated, surprised by the invitation. I've only just started painting again. I'm not sure my work is ready for public display. Tom smiled warmly. From what I saw, you're being too modest. Think about it. The deadline for submissions is 2 weeks from now. As I walked home, I found myself considering Tom's offer. The idea of displaying my work publicly was both terrifying and exhilarating. Before I could overthink it, I texted Diane, inviting her for lunch the next day. I needed a trusted perspective, someone who knew the person I'd been before I'd buried myself in the role of mother and caretaker. Diane's response came almost immediately. About time. Your place or Sunflower Cafe? We met at the cafe the following day, Diane arriving in a colorful scarf and statement earrings that reflected her vibrant personality. Always the most creative teacher on staff, she'd encouraged my artistic interests during our years working together. After catching up on mutual acquaintances and school gossip, I shared the full story of recent events, the inheritance, Michael's manipulation, the legal steps I was taking, and my rediscovery of painting. Diane listened intently, her expression shifting from shock to outrage to fierce determination. "Those ungrateful brats," she declared when I finished. "After everything you've done for them." "I keep wondering where I went wrong," I admitted. "How did I raise children who would do this?" Diane reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "This isn't about your parenting, Ellie. It's about greed and control. And maybe a bit about how society treats women our age, as if we suddenly become incompetent the moment we turn 60. She insisted on seeing my recent paintings, so we walked back to my house together. As I showed her the work I'd produced over the past few days, Diane's expression grew increasingly animated. "Ellie, these are extraordinary," she said, examining. "A watercolor of trees reflected in the lake. The emotion in them. There's such depth here. You absolutely must enter them in that art show." "They're just practice pieces," I protested. "I'm still finding my style again." "That raw quality is what makes them powerful," Diane argued. "They're honest, vulnerable. People will connect with that." Before leaving, Diane made me promise 2 things: to submit work to the art show, and to call her immediately if Michael or Jennifer escalated their attempts to control me. "You're not alone in this," she insisted, hugging me tightly. "Don't let them isolate you." That evening, as I was preparing a simple dinner, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. It was Dr. Stevens's office, calling to confirm an appointment. Michael had scheduled for me an evaluation for cognitive decline. "There must be a mistake," I told the receptionist. "I didn't schedule this appointment." "It was arranged by your son," she explained. "He expressed concerns about recent behavioral changes and memory issues." "I'm sure he did," I said dryly. "Please cancel the appointment. I have not authorized my son to schedule medical evaluations for me." After hanging up, I called Gloria. Immediately. "They're already trying it," I told her. "Michael scheduled a cognitive evaluation without my knowledge or consent." "This is concerning, but not surprising," Gloria said. "It suggests he's received the demand letter and is attempting to build a case against your competence. Are you free tomorrow morning? I'd like to take preemptive action." The next day, Gloria accompanied me to my regular doctor, where I underwent a complete physical and cognitive screening, passing with flying colors. The doctor provided a signed letter confirming my mental competence and capacity to manage my own affairs. Gloria then took me to a forensic accountant who specialized in financial exploitation cases, who documented evidence of the misleading nature of the documents Michael had me sign. "We're building our case," Gloria assured me. "If Michael doesn't comply with the demand letter by the deadline, we'll be ready to file for an emergency injunction." 5 days after receiving the demand letter, with hours remaining before the deadline, Michael finally called. "I can't believe you're doing this," he said without preamble. "Do you have any idea how this looks? My own mother threatening legal action over a simple misunderstanding?" "It wasn't a misunderstanding," I replied calmly. "You deliberately misled me about what I was signing." Michael scoffed. "That's ridiculous. You just didn't read it carefully enough." "The documents were intentionally deceptive, Michael. The forensic accountant's report makes that quite clear." There was a pregnant pause. "Forensic accountant? Mom, what have you done?" "I've protected myself," I said simply. "Are you going to return my money, or are we going to court?" After another long silence, Michael spoke, his voice tight with anger. "Fine, I'll transfer the funds back to you, but don't expect me to keep checking on you or helping around the house. You've made it clear you don't want my support." "What I don't want is your control," I corrected him. "There's a difference." The call ended abruptly. Within hours, I received confirmation from the bank that $247,000 had been transferred to my new account, the one Gloria had helped me open, with security measures that prevented anyone but me from accessing it. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt a profound sadness. In winning back my financial independence, I'd potentially lost my relationship with my children. While part of me hoped that time would heal this rift, another part recognized that things between us had fundamentally changed. I now saw Michael and Jennifer for who they truly were, not who I'd believed them to be. That night, I painted until dawn, not dark, angry pieces, but a sunrise breaking over Lakeside Grove, golden light spilling across the water. It was my submission piece for the art show, titled simply, New Beginning. The following weeks brought significant changes. Michael and Jennifer maintained a chilly distance, communicating only through terse texts. When they did reach out, it was often to express concern about my erratic behavior or to remind me how I'd hurt the family. I recognized these interactions for what they were: continued attempts to make me doubt myself, to feel guilty for asserting my independence. But as their presence in my life diminished, other relationships flourished. I became a regular at the community center, not just for the watercolor group, but for financial workshops, a book club, and occasional dance socials. Sarah, Martin, and Tom became true friends, along with others I met through various activities. When the day of the art show arrived, I was stunned to see a red "Sold" sticker appear beside my painting within the first hour. The community center director approached with a local gallery owner who expressed interest in seeing more of my work. "Your piece has emotional resonance," the gallery owner explained. "There's technical skill there, yes, but more importantly, there's authentic experience behind it. People connect with that." As I stood surrounded by new friends, accepting congratulations and discussing artistic techniques, I spotted a familiar figure hovering at the edge of the crowd. Jennifer, looking uncertain. Our eyes met across the room, and after a moment's hesitation, she approached. "Mom," she said tentatively, "your painting. It's beautiful." "Thank you," I replied, neither warm nor cold. Jennifer glanced around at the people surrounding. Me, people she'd never met. Lives I was building connections with outside of my role as her mother. "You seem different." I smiled slightly. "Not different. Just more myself than I've been in a very long time." She nodded, clearly uncomfortable. "Michael wanted me to check on you, make sure you're okay." "As you can see, I'm more than okay," I said, gesturing to the gallery space, the sold painting, the friends waiting patiently nearby. Jennifer bit her lip. "Mom, about what happened, I never meant—" I held up a hand to stop her. "Not here, Jennifer. This is a celebration. If you want to have that conversation, we can arrange another time." She nodded, looking both relieved and disappointed. "I'll call you," she promised before slipping away. Later, surrounded by my new circle at Sunflower Cafe, Tom raised a glass in toast. "To Ellie, the artist whose career is just beginning at 68. Everyone clinked glasses and Sarah added, "And to second chances and new beginnings." I smiled, looking around at these people who accepted me as I was, not as an extension of someone else's needs. For the first time in decades, I felt truly seen. As the evening wound down, I found myself walking home with Tom, who lived just a few blocks past my house. Our conversation flowed easily, touching on art, community events, and our respective journeys to this point in our lives. "You know," Tom said as we reached my driveway, "when you first came to the center, there was this look in your eyes, like someone who'd been underwater for a long time and had just broken the surface." I considered his words. That's exactly how it felt, like I'd been holding my breath for years without realizing it. Tom smiled, the streetlight illuminating the kind lines of his face. "Well, I for one am glad you decided to breathe again." As I watched him continue down the sidewalk, I realized something profound. My children had believed they were taking my fortune when they emptied my bank account. But my real wealth had nothing to do with money. It was my creativity, my capacity for growth, my willingness to start anew at 68. It was the fortune they'd never seen and could never take away. The morning after the art show, I woke to sunlight streaming through curtains I'd forgotten to close. For a moment, I lay still, savoring the quiet satisfaction that had settled in my chest. My painting had sold, a gallery owner had expressed interest in my work, and most surprisingly, Jennifer had made a tentative step toward reconciliation. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from Sarah. "Breakfast at Sunflower? The gang's meeting at 9:30. I smiled. The gang had become my anchor over the past weeks. Sarah with her practical wisdom, Martin with his dry humor, and Tom with his gentle encouragement. Their friendship had appeared exactly when I needed it most, filling the void left by my children's betrayal with something unexpected and precious. At Sunflower Cafe, the conversation flowed easily around steaming mugs of coffee and plates of blueberry pancakes. Martin was recounting his latest battle with the community center's ancient printer when my phone rang, an unfamiliar number with the local area code. "Eleanor Mitchell?" a woman's voice inquired when I answered. "This is Vanessa Klein from Lakeside Arts Gallery. We met briefly at your show yesterday." "Yes, of course," I replied, stepping away from the table for privacy. "Thank you for your interest in my work." "I've been thinking about your painting," Vanessa continued. "There's something compelling about it, a rawness combined with technical skill. I'd like to see more of your portfolio if you're open to it." I hesitated. I'm just getting back into painting after many years. I don't exactly have a portfolio. "Even better," Vanessa said, surprising me. "I love discovering artists who are finding or rediscovering their voice. Would you consider bringing whatever pieces you have to the gallery this week? No pressure, just a conversation about possibilities." After arranging a meeting for Wednesday, I returned to the table, slightly dazed. "Good news?" Tom asked, noticing my expression. "The gallery owner wants to see more of my work," I explained. "She called it a portfolio, which feels far too official for some paintings I've done in my spare bedroom." "It's a portfolio if you say it is," Sarah declared. "And from what I saw yesterday, your work deserves gallery attention." Martin raised his coffee mug to Ellie's artistic renaissance. "You're all being ridiculous," I protested, but warmth spread through me at their unwavering support. "Speaking of artistic endeavors," Tom said, "the community center just received funding for a new outreach program, art classes for underserved neighborhoods. They're looking for instructors." "I'm hardly qualified to teach," I pointed out. Tom's eyebrows rose. "Weren't you a teacher for decades?" "I taught 4th grade, not art." "You have formal training though, right?" Sarah asked. "Didn't you mention taking art classes in college?" "A minor in studio art, but that was centuries ago." Martin chuckled. "A slight exaggeration, perhaps?" Tom leaned forward, his expression earnest. "The program needs someone who understands both art and teaching. Just think about it. The position includes a small stipend. Not much, but enough to make it more than volunteer work. I promised to consider it, though privately I thought the idea absurd. Who would want art lessons from a woman who had abandoned painting for decades, only to restart in her late 60s? When I arrived home, Jennifer's car was parked in my driveway. She sat on the front steps, clutching a takeout tray with 2 coffee cups. "I brought peace offerings," she said, standing as I approached. "I wasn't sure if you'd be home." I unlocked the front door, gesturing for her to follow me inside. "I was having breakfast with friends." Jennifer nodded, absorbing this information as she placed the coffee on the kitchen counter. Her eyes widened at the paintings drying on every available surface. Landscapes, abstract studies of light and shadow, and several portraits of hands in various positions. "Mom, these are incredible," she said, moving closer to examine a small painting of gnarled, elderly hands cradling a paintbrush. "Is this yours? Your hands?" I nodded. A self-portrait of sorts. I had no idea you were this talented, Jennifer murmured, moving from one painting to the next. I mean, I remember you used to paint when we were little, but nothing like this. I didn't paint like this back then, I explained. I was too concerned with technical perfection. Now I'm more interested in emotional truth. Jennifer turned to face me, her expression contrite. I'm so sorry about everything, Mom. The money, the plans Michael and I made without talking to you. It was wrong. I studied my daughter's face, searching for sincerity. Why did you do it, Jennifer? Really? She sank into a kitchen chair, cradling her coffee. It's complicated. When Michael told me about Aunt Margot's inheritance, he presented it as a planning opportunity, a chance to make sure you were taken care of in the future. But then it became about control. And about the money itself, I added quietly. Jennifer? Flushed. Yes, I'm not proud of it, but when Michael started talking about how much would be left after paying for senior living, how we deserve to be compensated for managing your care, I went along with it. Why? Because it was easier than fighting him, she admitted. Because part of me thought he might be right, that you were getting older and might need that kind of care eventually. Because... She hesitated, then continued in a rush. Because Diego and I are struggling financially. His business isn't doing well, and we've got Emma's college to think about, and Tyler's special education needs. I absorbed this, feeling a complex mixture of hurt, disappointment, and unexpected compassion. You could have talked to me about needing help. You didn't have to conspire to take over my finances. Jennifer nodded miserably. I know that... Now? Michael kept saying it was for your own good, that you wouldn't understand the complexities of managing that much money. I should have questioned him more. Yes, you should have, I agreed. Michael has always been controlling, but I expected better from you. I'm truly sorry, Mom. What can I do to make this right? I considered her question carefully. I need time, Jennifer. Trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. But I'm willing to try, if you are. Relief washed over her face. I am, absolutely. Then let's start with honesty, complete honesty. No more discussions about me behind my back, no more plans made without my input. Agreed, Jennifer said quickly. And Michael? I sighed. Your brother and I have more to work through. He hasn't even acknowledged that what he did was wrong. Jennifer grimaced. He's struggling with this. His pride is hurt, and he genuinely believed he was doing the right thing. But I think seeing you at the art show, how happy you looked, how many people clearly cared about you, it rattled him. Good, I said simply. He needs to understand that my life is my own. I'm not an obligation or a problem to be managed. We talked for another hour, clearing the air about past hurts and misunderstandings. Jennifer shared more about her family's financial difficulties. Diego's construction business had lost several major contracts, and their savings were dwindling rapidly. I promised to consider how I might help, but made it clear that any assistance would be on my terms, not through manipulation or coercion. As Jennifer was leaving, she paused in the doorway. Mom, have you considered selling your work? These paintings, they're special. People would pay for this kind of quality and emotion. I smiled, thinking of my upcoming meeting with Vanessa Klein. Actually, I have a gallery consultation this week. Jennifer's eyes widened. Really? Mom, that's amazing! Her genuine enthusiasm warmed me, offering a glimpse of the daughter I remembered, the one who had once been my biggest cheerleader before adult responsibilities and her brother's influence had changed her. Over the following days, I carefully selected 10 paintings for my meeting with Vanessa, choosing pieces that represented different aspects of my emerging style. I included landscapes, abstract explorations, and the self-portrait Jennifer had admired, my aging hands holding a paintbrush, simultaneously fragile and strong. The gallery was housed in a converted warehouse near the lake, its industrial bones softened by warm lighting and thoughtfully arranged artwork. Vanessa welcomed me warmly, clearing a large table where I could display my work. "Let's see what you've brought," she said, stepping back to give the paintings proper consideration. I arranged them silently, fighting the urge to explain or apologize for each piece. Vanessa circled the table slowly, occasionally picking up a painting for closer examination. Her expression remained neutral, professional, impossible to read. "How long did you say you've been painting again?" she asked finally. "About a month," I admitted. "After decades away from it." Vanessa nodded. "That explains the interesting tension in your work. There's technical skill here. Composition, color theory, brushwork that shows formal training. But there's also an urgency, an emotional directness, that's often lost in more polished work." She gestured to the self-portrait. "This piece, for instance. The vulnerability is palpable." "Is that a good thing?" I asked. "It's a marketable thing," Vanessa replied pragmatically, "especially with the growing interest in older artists who bring life experience to their work. The art world is finally recognizing that creativity doesn't peak in youth." She selected 3 paintings: the self-portrait, a dawn landscape of Lakeside Grove, and an abstract piece dominated by swirling blues and golds. "I'd like to include these in our upcoming New Perspectives show next month," she said. "It features emerging and re-emerging local artists. We take a 30% commission on sales, but we handle all marketing and presentation. Would that interest you?" I stared at her, momentarily speechless. "You want to show my work? Professionally?" Vanessa smiled. "Eleanor?" "Ellie," I corrected automatically. "Ellie," she amended. "Your work has something to say. Whether it sells or not is always a gamble, but I believe there's an audience for your perspective." I left the gallery with a contract to review and 3 fewer paintings than I'd arrived with. Walking along the lakeshore, I called Diane to share the news. "I knew it," she crowed when I told her about the gallery show. "Didn't I tell you your work was extraordinary? This is just the beginning, Ellie." "It's a small local gallery, not the Metropolitan Museum of Art," I laughed, trying to temper both her enthusiasm and my own hopes. "Every artist starts somewhere," Diane insisted. "The important thing is that you're being seen, not just as Richard's widow or Michael and Jennifer's mother, but as Ellie Mitchell, artist." Her words stayed with me as I continued my walk. For decades, I'd defined myself through my relationships to others: daughter, wife, mother, teacher. The possibility of a new identity at 68 both thrilled and terrified me. That evening, Tom called to follow up about the community center teaching position. "The director asked specifically about you," he said. "I mentioned your background in education and your recent return to painting. She's very interested." "I'm flattered, but still not convinced I'm qualified," I hedged. "The program is designed for beginners with limited access to arts education," Tom explained patiently. "You wouldn't be training the next Picasso, just introducing basic techniques and the joy of creating. Your teaching experience actually makes you ideal." "Let me think about it?" "Of course," Tom agreed easily, "but not too long. They hope to start classes next month." After hanging up, I wandered into my spare bedroom-turned-studio, considering the half-finished canvas on my easel. The teaching position intrigued me more than I wanted to admit. There was something appealing about sharing my rediscovered passion, about possibly helping others find their own creative voices. The next morning, my phone rang just as I was finishing breakfast. It was Michael, the first time he'd called since returning my money. "Mom," he said, his voice tense, "we need to talk." "I'm listening," I replied cautiously. "Not over the phone. Can I come by this morning?" I agreed, curious about what had prompted this sudden desire for conversation. When Michael arrived an hour later, The strained formality of his posture reminded me of parent-teacher conferences where he'd been called to account for misbehavior. "Would you like coffee?" I offered, gesturing toward the kitchen. Michael shook his head. "I can't stay long. I just needed to." He trailed off, noticing the paintings. His eyebrows rose in visible surprise. "You did these?" "Yes." He moved closer, studying a landscape of the lake during a storm, dark, clouds gathering over churning water. "This is really good, Mom. I had no idea." "There's a lot you don't know about me," I said quietly. Michael's shoulders slumped slightly. "I'm beginning to realize that." He turned to face me, visibly steeling himself. "I owe you an apology. What I did, taking control of your money without fully explaining what you were signing, it was wrong. The admission caught me off guard. What brought on this realization?" Michael ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of Richard that my heart clenched. "Several things. Jennifer's been on my case nonstop. Kathy and I had a huge fight about it. She thinks I should have fought harder to maintain control of your finances. And then there was the letter." "What letter?" "From the state licensing board," Michael explained grimly. "Someone filed a complaint about my handling of your finances, suggesting I violated ethical standards for financial advisors. There's going to be an investigation." I stared at him. "I didn't file any complaint." "I know," he sighed. "Your lawyer did. She was quite thorough, documenting how the account transfer forms were intentionally misleading." I made a mental note to thank Gloria. "The complaint is justified, Michael. What you did wasn't just hurtful. It was unethical and potentially illegal." He nodded reluctantly. "I know. I convinced myself it was for your protection, but the truth is, I wanted control. And yes, I was thinking about the inheritance as family money, not just yours." "At least you're being honest now," I acknowledged. Michael's expression tightened. "This investigation could cost me my job, Mom, my reputation in the industry." "Are you asking me to intervene?" "Could you?" He looked up hopefully. "If you told them it was a misunderstanding, that you don't wish to pursue the complaint." I considered his request carefully. Part of me wanted to protect him, as I always had. But another part, the new Ellie who painted storms and stood up for herself, recognized that this was a consequence of his own actions. "I need to think about it," I said finally. "This isn't a simple misunderstanding to be brushed aside. You violated my trust, Michael. You treated me like I was incompetent, and you tried to take what wasn't yours to take." "I've apologized," he said, an edge creeping into his voice. "What more do you want?" "Real understanding," I replied. "Acknowledgement that I'm a capable adult with the right to make my own decisions, even decisions you disagree with. And a commitment that you'll never again try to control my life." Michael was quiet for a long moment. "I can promise to respect your decisions going forward," he said finally. "But I still believe we should discuss any major financial moves as a family. We all have a stake in this." "No, you don't," I said firmly. "My money is my own, Michael. Not family money. Not your future inheritance. Mine, to use as I see fit." He flinched slightly. "Even if that means spending it all? Leaving nothing for your grandchildren's education or future needs?" "Even then. Though for the record, I have every intention of supporting my grandchildren. But on my terms, not yours." Michael stood, clearly frustrated. "Will you at least think about the complaint? My entire career is at stake." "I'll consider it," I promised. "But I need time." After he left, I called Gloria for advice. She confirmed that her office had indeed filed a complaint with the licensing board based on the forensic accountant's assessment of the deceptive documents. "It's a serious ethics violation," she explained. Financial advisors have a fiduciary duty to act in their clients' best interests and to ensure informed consent. Michael failed on both counts. He's worried about losing his job, I said. That's a legitimate concern, Gloria acknowledged. The board could censure him, fine him, or in a worst-case scenario, revoke his license. But Ellie, you need to understand, this isn't just about you and Michael. If he's using these tactics with his own mother, what might he be doing with other, vulnerable clients? Her question gave me pause. I hadn't considered the broader implications of Michael's actions, that his willingness to deceive me might extend to his professional practice. What would happen if I asked to withdraw the complaint? I asked. The board might still investigate, but without your cooperation, they'd have a harder case to prove, Gloria explained. It's your decision, Ellie. But consider this. Sometimes, the most caring thing we can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their actions. I thanked her for her candor and spent the afternoon in my studio, working through my conflicted feelings on canvas. The resulting painting was a portrait of Michael as a child, standing by the lake with his father. I captured the admiration in his young face as he looked up at Richard, the desire to emulate, to earn approval. In many ways, that eager, approval-seeking child still existed within my adult son. That evening, Tom invited me to dinner at a small Italian restaurant near the community center. Over pasta and wine, we discussed the teaching position, which I had finally decided to accept. The classes will be held on Tuesdays and Thursdays, mostly working with teenagers from the South Side neighborhoods, Tom explained. 2 hours each session, focusing on watercolor techniques and self-expression. I'm nervous, I admitted. What if I can't connect with them? These kids will have such different life experiences from what I'm used to. Tom's eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. That's precisely why you'll be good at this. You're not assuming you know everything about them already. You're willing to learn while you teach. As Tom walked me home, our conversation drifted to more personal topics. His life before Lakeside Grove. He'd been a marketing executive in Chicago before retiring early after his wife's death. My memories of teaching, our shared love of classic films. At my front door, he hesitated. Ellie, I've enjoyed getting to know you these past weeks. I was wondering if you might like to see a movie this weekend. The classic cinema downtown is showing Casablanca. The invitation caught me off guard. After 50 years of marriage and 13 years of widowhood, the concept of dating seemed almost absurd. Yet the warmth in Tom's eyes and the gentle way he'd phrased the question made it feel natural, not frightening. I'd like that, I heard myself saying. I haven't seen Casablanca on the big screen since college. Tom's smile brightened. I'll pick you up at 6 on Saturday then. After he left, I sat on my porch swing, marveling at the unexpected turn my life had taken. 2 months ago, I'd been a retired teacher living quietly, my identity still firmly anchored to my roles as Richard's widow and Michael and Jennifer's mother. Now I was an artist with gallery representation, a soon-to-be art instructor, and apparently, a woman with a movie date. The following day, I visited the community center to complete paperwork for the teaching position and meet with the outreach program director, a dynamic woman named Gabriela Rodriguez. We're thrilled to have someone with your teaching background, Gabriela said, showing me the art room where classes would be held. Most of our instructors are passionate about their subjects, but have limited experience working with young people. I'm passionate but rusty, I admitted. It's been a while since I've taught. Gabriela waved away my concern. From what Tom tells me, you've got the essential qualities: patience, creativity, and genuine interest in helping others discover their capabilities. The rest is just logistics. We discussed curriculum plans, supplies, and the backgrounds of the students I'd be teaching, primarily teenagers from lower-income neighborhoods with limited access to arts education. Many were dealing with challenging home situations or academic struggles. Art can be transformative. For these kids, Gabriela explained, It provides an outlet for expression when words fail them. Sometimes all it takes is one supportive adult who sees their potential to change their trajectory. Her words resonated deeply, reminding me why I'd loved teaching in the first place. Those moments of connection, of helping young people recognize their own value and capabilities. As we finished our meeting, Gabriella handed me a stack of art supplies catalogs. The program has a modest budget for materials. See what you can put together for around $500 to start. I spent that evening happily immersed in planning, outlining a 10-week introductory course that would cover basic watercolor techniques while encouraging personal expression. For the first time in years, I felt the familiar excitement of creating a learning journey for others. Saturday evening arrived with unexpected butterflies in my stomach. I changed outfits 3 times before settling on a deep blue dress I'd bought years ago, but rarely worn. As I applied a touch of lipstick, I caught myself smiling at my reflection. A woman I was just getting to know again. Tom arrived precisely at 6, looking handsome in a sport coat and slacks. He presented me with a small, colorfully wrapped package. "I saw this and thought of you," he explained as I unwrapped it. A miniature watercolor set in a compact metal tin, perfect for painting. Outdoors. "It's lovely," I said, genuinely touched by the thoughtfulness of his gift. "I've been thinking about trying some plein air painting at the lake." The evening unfolded with a natural ease that surprised me. We enjoyed the film from the balcony of the beautifully restored theater, then strolled to a nearby cafe for dessert and coffee. Our conversation ranged from favorite books to travel dreams to family stories. "I never had children," Tom shared as we lingered over coffee. "Julia, my wife, and I tried for years, but it wasn't meant to be. After she died, I sometimes wondered if I'd missed my chance to leave any kind of legacy." "Children aren't the only way to create meaning," I said gently. "Look at all you do at the community center. The lives you touch there." Tom smiled. "That's what eventually pulled me out of grief, realizing I could still contribute, still connect with others." "What about you? How did you rebuild after losing?" "Richard?" I considered his question carefully. "I'm not sure I did, not really. I poured myself into being there for Michael and Jennifer, then my students. I think I'm only now learning how to live for myself." "Better late than never," Tom said, raising his coffee cup in a small toast. Walking home under a canopy of stars, Tom took my hand. The simple contact, warm palm against mine, fingers gently interlaced, sent a current of awareness through me. When we reached my front door, he hesitated, then leaned in to kiss me softly on the cheek. "Thank you for a wonderful evening, Ellie," he said. "I enjoyed it too," I replied, meaning it completely. Sunday morning brought an unexpected visitor, Michael's son, Zach, my 17-year-old grandson. I hadn't seen him since the art show, and his appearance on my doorstep, skateboard tucked under his arm, hair falling into his eyes, caught me by surprise. "Grandma," he said, shifting awkwardly. "Can I come in?" "Of course," I replied, stepping aside. "Would you like something to drink? I just made lemonade." Zach followed me to the kitchen, setting his skateboard carefully by the door. "Dad doesn't know I'm here," he blurted as I poured lemonade. "He and Mom have been fighting about you, about the money and the complaint thing." I handed him a glass. "I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of adult problems." Zach shrugged. "I'm almost an adult myself. Besides, I've got eyes." "I can see what's happening." "What do you see?" I asked, curious about his perspective. "Dad's freaking out about his job, but he won't admit he did anything wrong. Mom's mad because she told him the whole plan was messed up from the start." Zach took a long drink of lemonade. "And you're different now, not in a bad way. You seem more, I don't know, alive?" The observation, coming from someone so young, struck me with its perceptiveness. I feel more alive, I acknowledged. I'm rediscovering parts of myself I set aside a long time ago. Zach nodded toward the paintings visible in my studio. Like your art. It's really good, Grandma. I saw the piece at the show before Dad dragged me out of there. He dragged you out? Yeah, he got all weird when he saw you with those other people. Said we were leaving, even though we'd just got there. Zach hesitated, then added, I think he was jealous or something. Like he's used to being the most important person in your life. Out of the mouths of babes, I thought wryly. Your father and I are working through some difficult things right now. But Zach, I want you to know that none of this affects how I feel about you. You're still my grandson, and I still love you very much. I know that, he said with teenage certainty. That's not why I came. I wanted to ask you something. Go ahead. I have this art project for school. We're supposed to create something that represents family legacy. I was thinking, maybe you could help me? Show me how to paint something? Dad said you used to be really good, even before you started again. The request touched me deeply. I'd be honored to help you, Zach. When is the project due? 3 weeks, he said. I was thinking maybe I could come over after school sometimes. Absolutely, I agreed. But what about your parents? If your father doesn't know you're here, now. Zach's expression turned stubborn, so reminiscent of Michael at the same age that I nearly smiled. Mom will be fine with it. Dad. Well, he'll have to deal. It's my project and my choice who helps me with it. After Zach left, promising to return Tuesday after school, I called Jennifer to ensure she knew about her nephew's plans. Zach mentioned his art project to me last week, Jennifer confirmed. I think it's wonderful he's reaching out to you, Mom. He needs positive influences right now. Things at Michael's house are pretty tense. What's happening with the investigation? I asked. Jennifer sighed. It's preliminary stages. Michael had to submit documentation and a formal response to the allegations. He's worried, Mom. His firm takes regulatory compliance very seriously. They've already restricted some of his client activities pending the outcome. I felt a twinge of guilt, quickly followed by resolve. Michael needed to understand the seriousness of his actions. Perhaps this professional consequence would accomplish what my words could not. I've been thinking about whether to withdraw the complaint, I told Jennifer. Part of me wants to protect him, as I always have. But another part thinks this might be a necessary lesson. For what it's worth, Jennifer said carefully, I think you should let the investigation proceed. Michael has always skated by on charm and manipulation. Maybe it's time he faced some real accountability. Her perspective surprised me. That's a significant shift from your position a few weeks ago. I've been doing a lot of reflecting, Jennifer admitted, about the kind of example I want to set for my kids, about what it means to truly respect someone. What Michael did, what we did, wasn't respectful. It wasn't loving. It was controlling and selfish. Yes, I agreed simply. It was. I want to do better, Mom. I want my relationship with you to be honest. And I want Emma and Tyler to see that, to understand that respecting you doesn't mean making decisions for you. After we hung up, I sat on the porch swing, reflecting on how dramatically my family dynamics had shifted in just a few short weeks. Jennifer moving toward genuine understanding, Michael facing professional consequences, Zach reaching out independently. None of it would have happened if I'd simply acquiesced to their plan, if I'd accepted the role of docile, grateful mother instead of standing up for myself. The next day, I received an email from Gloria. The licensing board has requested your testimony. Please call me to discuss options. I called immediately. Gloria explained that the board wanted a formal statement about the documentation Michael had me sign and the circumstances surrounding it. You have several options, she outlined. You can provide written testimony, appear before the board. in person, or decline to participate. If you decline, they'll likely continue their investigation, but with limited evidence from your perspective. What do you recommend? I asked. Professionally speaking, written testimony would provide the facts they need while minimizing the emotional toll on you, Gloria advised. But Ellie, this is ultimately about what feels right to you. You're not responsible for protecting Michael from the consequences of his actions. After our call, I sat in my studio, contemplating the half-finished portrait of Michael as a child. My son had made serious mistakes, ethical breaches that potentially affected not just me but other clients. Yet he was still my child, the little boy who had once looked up to his father with such admiration. I made my decision. I would provide written testimony, factual, unemotional, focusing on the documents themselves rather than attacking Michael's character. The board needed to know what had happened, but I didn't need to drive the nail in personally. As I finished the portrait that afternoon, adding the final touches to Richard's proud expression and Michael's adoring gaze, I realized something. Important, holding Michael accountable wasn't about punishment. It was about growth, his and mine. For too long, I'd protected my children from consequences, fostering dependency rather than resilience. That evening, I called Michael. I've decided to provide written testimony to the licensing board, I told him. I won't be vindictive, but I will be truthful. There was a long silence before he responded. I understand. I don't like it, but I understand. This isn't about hurting you, Michael. It's about integrity, yours and mine. Maybe, he conceded. Zach mentioned he's coming over tomorrow to work on an art project. Yes, he asked for my help. Is that a problem? Michael sighed. No, actually, it might be good for him. He's been struggling lately, dropping grades, attitude problems. Maybe spending time with you will help. I'd like that, I said, feeling a bridge beginning to form across the chasm between us. It was fragile, barely more than a thread, but it was a start. The next day brought a flurry of activity. My first meeting with Zach to discuss his art project, preparation for my teaching position, and a final review of the gallery contract for the upcoming show. As I moved between these different aspects of my new life, I felt a profound sense of purpose and engagement that had been missing for years. That night, as I prepared for bed, I found myself thinking about Margot's letter. Do what you never let yourself do. It's not too late. She had been right. At 68, I was discovering that life could still hold surprise, growth, and new beginnings. My sister's inheritance had indeed been a fortune, but not in the way my children had imagined. When they tried to control it, the true gift wasn't the money itself, but the catalyst it provided, pushing me to reclaim my agency, rediscover my passion, and reimagine what my remaining years could be. As I drifted off to sleep, one thought settled in my mind with perfect clarity. My children had emptied my bank account, believing they were securing my future and their inheritance. But they hadn't found my real fortune, the creative spirit, resilience, and capacity for joy that had been mine all along, waiting patiently to be recognized and reclaimed. That was the wealth no one could ever take from me. The art studio at Riverview Community Center buzzed with teenage energy. 8 students, 4 boys and 4 girls ranging from 14 to 17, were scattered around tables covered with watercolor paper, paint palettes, brushes, and cups of water. It was my 3rd session teaching, and I was still adjusting to the controlled chaos of adolescent creativity. Ms. Mitchell, I messed it up again, sighed Darius, a lanky 15-year-old with a gift for drawing but little patience for watercolor's unpredictability. I walked over to examine his landscape, where colors had run together in unexpected ways. This isn't a mistake, I told him, pointing to where blue and yellow had blended into an interesting green. This is watercolor showing you possibilities you hadn't planned. Darius looked skeptical. It looks like a mess to me. Art is full of happy accidents, I explained. The trick is learning which ones to keep and which ones to work with. Across the room, my grandson Zach was helping Mariana, a quiet girl who rarely spoke, but expressed herself powerfully through bold color choices. He'd become my unofficial assistant, arriving early to help set up and staying late to clean brushes. His own project, a triptych representing 3 generations of our family, was progressing beautifully, showing talent I hadn't realized he possessed. 5 more minutes, I announced. Then we'll do our group critique. As the students finished their work, I reflected on how quickly the class had become a highlight of my week. These teenagers, many dealing with difficult circumstances, approached art with a raw honesty that was both challenging and refreshing. They questioned everything, pushed boundaries, and occasionally tested my patience. But they also showed moments of vulnerability that reminded me why teaching had always felt like a calling. After class, as Zach helped me clean up, he seemed uncharacteristically quiet. "Everything okay?" I asked, rinsing brushes at the sink. He shrugged, the universal teenage gesture of complicated feelings. "Dad's been asking a lot of questions about coming here, about what we talk about." "What? Did you tell him?" "The truth. That we talk about art and stuff." Zach hesitated. "He's worried you're saying things about him, like turning me against him or whatever." I dried my hands, giving Zach my full attention. "I would never do that. Whatever is happening between your father and me, it doesn't involve you." "I know that," he said quickly. "But Dad's been weird lately, stressed about work. Mom says he might lose his license." The guilt I'd been trying to suppress resurfaced. "The licensing board is investigating some decisions he made. It's complicated, Zach." "Was it really that bad? What he did with your money?" The question, asked with such youthful directness, deserved an honest answer. "Yes, it was. Your father took control of my finances without my fully informed consent. That's not just wrong within our family. It's an ethical violation in his profession." Zach absorbed this, his expression troubled. "He says you're exaggerating. That you signed the papers and then changed your mind." "I signed papers that were intentionally unclear about what I was agreeing to," I explained carefully. "That's called misrepresentation. It's like if someone asked you to sign a permission slip for a field trip, but the fine print actually gave them rights to post photos of you online forever." Understanding dawned in Zach's eyes. "That's messed up." "Yes, it is. But Zach, your father isn't a bad person. He made bad choices, partly because he's used to being in control, partly because he genuinely thought he knew what was best for me." "Do you hate him now?" Zach asked, his voice small. I shook my head firmly. "No, I'm disappointed and hurt, but I don't hate him. He's still my son, just as he's still your father. People can make serious mistakes without becoming worthless." Zach nodded slowly. "Dad says he might have to change jobs, move to a different firm or something." "That would be difficult, but not the end of the world," I pointed out. "Sometimes we need to rebuild after mistakes. It's part of growing." As we walked out of the community center together, Zach suddenly asked, "Grandma, do you think I'm like him? Like Dad?" The question caught me off guard. "In some ways," I said honestly. "You have his determination and intelligence. But you're your own person, Zach. You don't have to repeat anyone else's patterns." He seemed to find comfort in that, heading off on his skateboard with a wave and a hint of his usual confidence restored. Back home, I found Tom waiting on my front porch with a picnic basket. In the week since our first date, we'd settled into a comfortable routine of shared meals, walks by the lake, and increasingly personal conversations. His presence in my life felt both surprising and natural, an unexpected gift of companionship when I'd assumed that chapter was closed. "I thought you might be hungry after teaching," he said, holding up the basket. "The weather's perfect for dinner outside." We set up on my small backyard patio, sharing a meal of cold chicken, pasta salad, and fresh strawberries. I told him about Zach's concerns regarding his father. "It's a difficult position for a teenager," Tom observed, caught between loyalty to his father and his own observations about what's right. "I worry about putting him in the middle," I admitted. "That was never my intention." "You haven't," Tom assured me. "Michael's choices created this situation, not yours. You're actually giving Zach something valuable, a model of standing up for yourself with dignity." His perspective helped ease my nagging guilt. "The licensing board wants my testimony next week. I've prepared a written statement, but I'm still conflicted about it." Tom reached across the table, covering my hand with his. "Whatever you decide will be the right choice for you. There's no perfect solution here." After dinner, we sat on the porch swing as twilight deepened around us. Tom's arm rested comfortably around my shoulders, the weight of it reassuring rather than restrictive. "I have news," he said after a comfortable silence. "I've been asked to coordinate a regional arts festival for next spring. It would mean more hours at the community center, but also more opportunities to expand programs like your class." "That's wonderful," I said sincerely. "You'd be perfect for it." Tom smiled. "There's more. The festival will include a juried art show, open to all ages. I think you should submit your work." "I'm hardly ready for juried competitions," I protested. "I've only been painting seriously for a few months." "Which makes your work all the more remarkable," Tom countered. "Promise me you'll think about it?" Under his warm gaze, I found myself nodding. "I'll consider it, but only if you promise not to pull any strings." "Wouldn't dream of it," he assured me, leaning in to kiss me softly. The casual affection between us still surprised me sometimes. The ease with which Tom's hand found mine, the comfortable way we moved in each other's space. After 13 years of widowhood, this new relationship felt both foreign and familiar, like returning to a language I'd once known fluently but had nearly forgotten. The next morning, I woke to a text from Jennifer. "Mom, call me when you can. Need to talk." The urgency in her message concerned me. When I called, she answered immediately, her voice tight with stress. "Michael's in trouble," she said without preamble. "The licensing board received an anonymous tip with additional allegations, claims that he's mishandled other clients' accounts, not just yours." My stomach dropped. "Are the allegations true?" Jennifer hesitated. "I don't know for sure. Michael says they're exaggerated, but he's been acting strange, Mom. Defensive, secretive. Kathy called me crying yesterday. She found documents he'd hidden, showing transfers from elderly clients' accounts to investment vehicles where he receives higher commissions. That sounds like a serious conflict of interest," I said, remembering Gloria's concerns about Michael's potential behavior with other vulnerable clients. "It's worse than that. If these transactions weren't fully disclosed and authorized, it could be considered fraud." Jennifer's voice broke. "He could face criminal charges, Mom, not just professional sanctions." I sank into a kitchen chair, the implications washing over me. "Has he spoken with an attorney?" "Yes, but he's in denial about how serious this is. He keeps insisting he can explain everything, that his clients authorized everything he did." Jennifer paused. "The thing is, some of these clients are older than you, much less sophisticated about finances. If he used the same tactics with them." The thought sickened me. "What do you need from me, Jennifer?" "I don't know," she admitted. I needed to tell someone who would understand. Diego tries, but this is family stuff. It's complicated." "Yes, it is," I agreed softly. "Thank you for telling me. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." After hanging up, I sat motionless, absorbing the news. If the additional allegations were true, Michael's actions went beyond misguided paternalism toward me. They reflected a pattern of exploiting vulnerable clients. The thought that my son could behave this way professionally shook me deeply. I called Gloria for perspective. If these new allegations are substantiated, she explained, the licensing board would likely refer the case to law enforcement. Financial exploitation, particularly of elderly clients, can carry significant penalties. Could he go to prison? I asked bluntly. It's possible, though first-time offenders often receive probation and restitution requirements, Gloria said. But his professional career would essentially be over. No reputable firm would hire someone with that kind of record. I thanked her for the information and spent the afternoon in my studio, trying to process my tumultuous emotions through painting. The resulting image was dark and fragmented, a maze of sharp angles and shadowed corners, with a small, bright opening in the distance. When Tom called to confirm our plans for the evening, I asked for a rain check, needing solitude to sort through my thoughts. Around 7 that evening, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Michael standing there, looking haggard and disheveled. So, unlike his usually polished appearance, that I barely recognized him. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice rough. I stepped aside silently, leading him to the living room. He sat heavily on the couch, running his hands through unkempt hair. "Jennifer called you," he stated flatly. "Yes." Michael nodded, staring at his clasped hands. "She doesn't understand. None of you do. Everything I did was for my clients' benefit. The investments I chose perform better long-term than the conservative options they would have selected themselves. Whether that's true or not," I said carefully. "The issue is disclosure and consent, Michael. Did these clients fully understand what you were doing with their money?" His silence was answer enough. "Why?" I asked simply. "You've always been successful. Why risk your career and reputation this way?" Michael's facade finally cracked. "Because it's never enough," he burst out. "Do you have any idea what it's like in my industry? The constant pressure to outperform, to bring in more clients, more assets. The younger advisors nipping at my heels with their algorithms and apps. I'm 42, Mom. In 5 years, I'll be considered over the hill." "So this was about proving yourself?" "It was about survival," he insisted. "About securing my position, making myself indispensable through performance." He looked up, his expression raw with emotions I rarely saw in my controlled son. And yes, it was about the money too. Kathy's real estate business has been struggling. Zach needs braces. College is coming faster than we can save for it. The bills just keep coming. Many people face financial pressure without crossing ethical lines, I pointed out. Michael flinched. "I know, I convinced myself the ends justified the means, that if the investments performed well, everyone would benefit." "And did they? Perform well?" His expression crumpled. "Some did, others. The market turned against us. I've been moving money around, trying to cover losses before clients notice." The admission sent a chill through me. This wasn't just unethical behavior. It sounded dangerously close to a Ponzi scheme. "Michael, you need to stop, immediately. And you need serious legal counsel, not just professional representation for the licensing board." "It's too late," he said dully. "One of my older clients' daughters discovered discrepancies in her mother's accounts. She's the one who filed the anonymous complaint. Once the board starts comparing client statements with actual holdings," I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "What are you here for, Michael? What do you need from me?" He looked up, desperation in his eyes. "I don't know. Understanding? Forgiveness? A mother who doesn't look at me like I'm a criminal?" "I don't see you as a criminal," I said quietly. "I see you as my son who has made serious mistakes and needs to take responsibility for them." "That's it? That's all you have to offer?" Anger flashed through his desperation. I could lose everything, Mom. My career, my reputation, maybe even my freedom. Yes, you could, I acknowledged. Actions have consequences, Michael. Even for you. I should have known better than to come here, he said bitterly, standing up. You've never understood the pressures I'm under. You've always had this simplistic view of right and wrong. Is it really so simplistic to believe you shouldn't deceive people and take control of their money without proper consent? Michael stalked toward the door. Forget it. I'll figure this out myself. I always do. After he left, I called Jennifer to let her know about his visit. He's in a dangerous state of mind, I warned her. Desperate, defensive, not fully accepting reality. Should I call Kathy? Jennifer asked. Make sure she knows how serious this is. Yes, I decided. And maybe check on Zach, too. This has to be affecting him, even if Michael is trying to shield him from it. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, replaying my conversation with Michael, wondering if I should have been more supportive, less confrontational. By dawn, I had reached a decision. I couldn't fix Michael's problems or shield him from consequences, but I could offer practical help to minimize the collateral damage to his family. I called Kathy mid-morning, half expecting her to ignore my call. To my surprise, she answered immediately. Ellie, she said, her voice subdued. I was just thinking about calling you. How are you holding up? I asked. Not well, she admitted. Michael didn't come home last night. He's not answering his phone. I'm worried. Alarm. Shot through me. Have you called the police? Not yet. His car is gone and he took a suitcase. I think he just needed space. Kathy's voice cracked. Everything's falling apart, Ellie. The board contacted his firm yesterday. They've suspended him pending investigation. Our accounts are frozen. I don't even know how I'll pay the mortgage next month. That's actually why I'm calling, I said. I want to help Kathy, not Michael. He needs to face the professional consequences of his actions. But you and Zach shouldn't have to lose. You're home because of his mistakes. Silence stretched between us. Why would you help me? Kathy finally asked. After everything. After the way I treated you. Because you're Zach's mother, I said simply. And because holding grudges takes energy I'd rather direct elsewhere. Kathy began to cry, soft, broken sounds that made her seem suddenly human in a way she never had before. I don't deserve your help. It's not about deserving, I told her. It's about doing what's right for Zach and for my own peace of mind. Can we meet later today to discuss practical arrangements? We agreed to meet at Sunflower Cafe that afternoon. After hanging up, I called the police to report Michael missing, then contacted Jennifer to update her. She promised to come to town immediately, bringing her family for support. We'll find him, Mom, she assured me. Michael has always been a survivor. The day passed in a blur of phone calls, police reports, and growing worry. By the time I met Kathy at the cafe, there was still no word from Michael. She arrived looking diminished somehow, her usual polished perfection replaced by obvious exhaustion and fear. Zach's with friends, she explained as we found a quiet corner table. I didn't want him home alone, worrying. Good thinking, I approved. Teenagers need normalcy, especially during family crises. Kathy stared into her untouched coffee. I keep thinking about the last conversation Michael and I had. We argued about money. Again? I told him he needed to be more transparent about our finances. He said I wouldn't understand, that he was handling it. She looked up, eyes red-rimmed. I should have pressed harder, asked more questions. We can't change the past, I said gently. Right now, we need to focus on practical matters. How much do you need to cover essential expenses while this is sorted out? We spent the next hour going through Kathy's immediate financial needs. The mortgage was substantial. They had bought more house than they could comfortably afford. But utilities, insurance, and Zach's needs were manageable. I agreed to cover 3 months of essential expenses, with the understanding that Kathy would use that time to make longer-term plans. "I'll need to sell the house," she acknowledged, "and probably go back to work full-time. I've been coasting in real estate, taking only the high-end listings that interested me." "You're resourceful," I said. "You'll figure it out." As we prepared to leave, Kathy hesitated. "Ellie, there's something you should know. The inheritance. Michael didn't just move it to a managed account. He invested some of it in high-risk ventures, trying to recover losses from other accounts." My stomach dropped. "How much?" "About 50,000, she admitted. "I only found out when I started going through his files yesterday. The rest is safe in the account he showed you." The revelation stung, but less than it might have earlier. Money, I had learned, was just money. It could be lost and regained. What couldn't be replaced was time, relationships, self-respect. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "I appreciate your honesty." As I drove home, my phone rang, Jennifer calling with news. "The police found Michael's car," she said, her voice tight with worry. "It was parked at Lakeside Bluff. They're searching." "The area now?" My heart lurched. Lakeside Bluff was a scenic outlook with dangerous cliffs overlooking the water. "I'm on my way." I arrived at the search site to find police vehicles, a rescue boat on the water below, and Jennifer standing with Diego, staring out at the darkening lake. She rushed to embrace me when I approached. "No sign of him yet," she said, voice trembling. "They found his wallet and phone in the car, Mom. Why would he leave those behind unless—" "Don't jump to conclusions," I said firmly, though my own fear was mounting. Michael has always been dramatic, but he's never been self-destructive. As twilight deepened into night, the search continued with flashlights and thermal imaging equipment. Kathy arrived with Zach, whose teenage stoicism crumbled at the sight of the search teams. I held my grandson while he cried, his body shaking, with emotions too big to contain. "It's my fault," he kept saying. I was so mad at him. The last thing I said was that I was ashamed he was my dad. "This isn't your fault," I told him fiercely. "Your father is responsible for his own choices. All of them." Around midnight, a police officer approached our huddled group. "We've completed the cliff search and shoreline. No sign of Mr. Mitchell. We're suspending water operations until daylight, but we'll maintain a presence overnight in case he returns to his vehicle." "Well, what do we do now?" Jennifer asked, voice small. "Go home. Try to rest," the officer advised. "We'll contact you immediately if there are any developments." None of us wanted to leave, but with Zach falling asleep on his feet and temperatures dropping, we finally agreed to regroup in the morning. I invited everyone to stay at my house, which was closest to the search area. As we prepared to leave, a park ranger hurried over. "Mrs. Mitchell, we just received a call from the ranger station on the north side of the lake. A man matching your son's description checked into one of the camping cabins there earlier today. Paid cash, no ID." Relief flooded through me. "Is he still there?" "Yes, ma'am." He requested not to be disturbed, but when the night ranger made rounds, he recognized him from the missing person alert. Within an hour, we had confirmation that Michael was safe, though he was refusing to speak with anyone or leave the cabin. The police, satisfied he wasn't in immediate danger, agreed to let him have the night to himself. "I'll go first thing in the morning," I decided as we drove home. "He might be more willing to talk to me alone." Jennifer nodded, exhaustion evident in her slumped shoulders. "What happens now, Mom? Even if he comes home, nothing's fixed. The investigation, the financial problems, all of it is still waiting. One step at a time," I counseled. "First, we make sure he's safe. Then we face whatever comes next together." At dawn, I drove alone to the North Shore Ranger Station, where a sympathetic ranger escorted me to the rustic cabin where Michael had taken refuge. Smoke curled from the chimney, suggesting he was awake. I knocked softly. "Michael, it's Mom." After a long pause, the door opened. My son stood before me, unshaven and hollow-eyed, but alive. Without a word, I stepped forward and embraced him, relief overwhelming any anger or disappointment I still harbored. "Everyone's been searching for you," I said when I finally pulled back. "Zach is terrified." Shame crossed Michael's face. I never meant to scare him. I couldn't. Face everyone. I needed to think. The cabin was spare but clean, with a small kitchenette, a fireplace, and a bed where a rumpled sleeping bag suggested Michael had managed at least some rest. I sat at the tiny table while he made instant coffee on the stove. "What were you thinking?" I asked quietly. "When you left your wallet and phone in the car at the bluff?" Michael's hands stilled. "Not what you're imagining. I wasn't planning to jump, I just wanted to disappear for a while. Start over somewhere nobody knows me. Without saying goodbye to your son? Without facing what you've done?" He flinched. I know it was cowardly. I drove to the bluff to think, to look at the water. Then I realized I couldn't run away from this. But I couldn't go home yet either. "So, you came here?" Michael nodded. "I used to camp here with Dad. When I was a kid, remember? It was the one place I felt peaceful." The mention of Richard brought a pang of bittersweet memory. "He loved it here," said the lake reminded him to keep perspective. "I've lost all perspective, Mom," Michael admitted, his voice breaking. "I don't know how to fix what I've done." "You start by facing it," I said gently. "By acknowledging the full reality of your actions and their consequences. I could go to prison. Yes, you could. And if that happens, your family will still be here when you come out. But running away guarantees you lose everything." Michael stared into his coffee cup. "I keep thinking about Dad. How disappointed he would be." "Your father made his share of mistakes," I reminded him. "But he faced them. He took responsibility." "I'm scared, Mom," he whispered, suddenly looking very young. "I know you are," I said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "But you're not alone. We'll get through this together. Not by hiding or denying what's happened, but by facing it head-on." As morning sunlight filtered through the cabin windows, Michael slowly began to talk, really talk, about the decisions that had led him to this point. The pressure he'd put on himself to be successful, the financial overextension, the first small ethical compromises that had grown into something unmanageable. "I wanted to be someone important," he confessed, "someone who mattered. Dad was so well respected in his field. Everyone looked up to him." "Your father worked 30 years to build that reputation," I pointed out. "He didn't take shortcuts." "I know, I just got impatient. Thought I deserved success faster than it was coming." Michael looked up, his expression stripped of defenses. "I'm going to lose everything, aren't I?" "Not everything," I said firmly. "Your career, possibly. Your current lifestyle, certainly. But not your family. Not if you start making better choices now." By mid-morning, I had convinced Michael to return home and face whatever came next. Jennifer had already contacted a criminal defense attorney specializing in financial cases, who agreed to meet with Michael that afternoon. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with legal proceedings, financial consequences, and painful reckonings. But at least we would walk it together. As we drove back around the lake, Michael stared out at the water. "I'm sorry for what I did to you, Mom. The money, the manipulation, all of it. I told myself it was for your own good, but the truth is, I couldn't stand the thought of you not needing me anymore." The admission struck me with its simple truth. "I'll always need you, Michael. just not to manage my life or make my decisions. I'm starting to understand the difference, he said quietly. Back at my house, Zach's relief at seeing his father overwhelmed his recent anger. He flung himself into Michael's arms with a sob that spoke volumes about the fear he'd been carrying. Jennifer's reaction was more measured, relief tempered by wariness about what still lay ahead. The family gathered in my living room, where Michael finally did what he should have done weeks ago. He told the complete truth about his actions, his motivations, and the likely consequences. Kathy listened silently, her expression shifting between anger, fear, and resignation. Zach alternated between teenage bravado and glimpses of the frightened child beneath. "I'll understand if you want a divorce," Michael told Kathy when he had finished. "I've destroyed the life we built." "Let's not make any permanent decisions right now," Kathy replied, surprising me with her restraint. "One crisis at a time." As the family discussion continued, I slipped away to my studio, needing a moment of quiet reflection. The painting I'd been working on, the dark maze with its distant light, suddenly seemed prophetic. Our family was indeed navigating a labyrinth of consequences, but there was light ahead if we could find our way toward it together. Tom called while I was contemplating the canvas. "I heard about Michael," he said without preamble. "Are you okay?" "I'm managing," I told him. "It's going to be a long road, but at least he's safe and ready to face what's coming." "Do you need anything? Company? Food? A listening ear?" His offer touched me deeply. "Actually, I'd love for you to come over later. Meet my family properly, if you're comfortable with that." "I'd be honored," Tom said. "Just tell me when." As I rejoined my family in the living room, I was struck by how much had changed in just a few months. The children who had once conspired to control my life were now grappling with their own crises, looking to me not for financial resources, but for the strength and wisdom I'd developed through my own journey of reclamation. Michael would face serious consequences for his actions. Our family would weather significant changes in the coming months and years. But through it all, I had found something precious: my own voice, my creative passion, and the courage to live authentically, regardless of age or circumstance. My children had indeed emptied my bank account, believing they were securing my fortune. What they hadn't realized, what I myself had only recently discovered, was that my true wealth had nothing to do with money at all. It resided in my capacity for growth, for creativity, for loving deeply while standing firmly in my own truth. That was the fortune no one could ever take from me. And now, watching my family begin their own difficult journeys toward authenticity and responsibility, I realized it was also the most valuable legacy I could possibly leave them. 1 year later, I stood in the Lakeside Arts Gallery surrounded by 23 of my paintings. The solo exhibition, my first, had drawn a surprisingly large crowd, including art lovers from neighboring towns who'd read about the retired teacher who found her artistic voice at 68. The local newspaper had run a feature story about my journey, complete with photos of me teaching at the community center and working in my studio. "Quite a turnout," Tom whispered, appearing at my side with 2 glasses of champagne. His eyes crinkled with pride as he surveyed the room. "You deserve every bit of this." I accepted the champagne, still slightly overwhelmed by the attention. It feels surreal. A year ago, I hadn't picked up a paintbrush in decades. "And now you're selling paintings faster than you can create them," Tom said, gesturing to the red dots marking 12 already sold pieces. The exhibition represented a year of growth, both artistically and personally. My style had evolved, becoming more confident and distinctive, watercolors that captured emotional landscapes as much as physical ones, scenes of transition and transformation that resonated with viewers of all ages. Across the gallery, I spotted Michael in quiet conversation with Vanessa Klein, the gallery owner. He looked different now, humbler, the polished corporate veneer replaced by something more authentic. The past year had been difficult for him. After pleading guilty to reduced charges of financial misconduct, he'd avoided prison, but received 5 years of probation, significant financial penalties, and permanent revocation of his professional licenses. Yet in losing his career and status, Michael had found something valuable: honesty with himself and others. He now worked as an office manager for a local nonprofit, earning a modest salary that had necessitated a complete lifestyle overhaul. For his family, they'd sold the house in the Pines, moved to a simple apartment, and embraced financial transparency as a family value. Zach caught my eye and waved enthusiastically before returning to his conversation with 2 of my art students. My grandson had blossomed over the past year, discovering his own artistic talents and developing a new respect for his father's journey toward accountability. Jennifer arrived late with her family, hurrying over to hug me. "Sorry we couldn't get here sooner. The traffic from the city was terrible." "I'm just glad you made it," I said, genuinely happy to see them. Our relationship had deepened over the months, evolving into a friendship between adults rather than just a mother-daughter bond. As Vanessa clinked a glass to quiet the crowd, for a brief speech about my work, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. My journey had begun with a painful betrayal, the discovery that my children had emptied my bank account for safekeeping. Yet that moment of crisis had catalyzed the most meaningful chapter of my life. The money, in the end, had proven almost irrelevant. I'd recovered most of it, used some to help Michael's family during their transition, and invested the rest, conservatively. But the real fortune, the wealth that sustained me through each day, was everywhere around me. In the creative passion I'd reclaimed, in the students whose lives I touched, in the hard-won wisdom that allowed me to help my family navigate their own challenges. Later that evening, as Tom and I walked home beneath a canopy of stars, he squeezed my hand gently. "Penny for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking about different kinds of wealth," I replied, "and how sometimes we don't recognize our true fortune until life forces us to look in unexpected places." Tom nodded, understanding immediately as he always did. "The best treasures are the ones money can't buy." "Exactly," I agreed. "And sometimes the things we think we've lost turn out to be the doorway to everything we never knew we needed." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.